Here's a word to make you squirm. Sin. You might think sin is doing bad things, but sin is much more sinister than that. Sin is lurking. It corrupts everything, undercuts everyone. It wants to sabotage your future and steal your family. So maybe you should worry. Maybe sin is worse than you thought. Maybe it's malevolent.
Well, good morning, everybody here, everybody watching online. My name's Michael. I'm one of the pastors on staff here at Hope. And you picked a great Sunday to be here. We are right in the middle of this series called Malevolent, where we are exploring all of the different aspects of the nature of sin and temptation, what it's really like, the implications and ramifications it has for our lives here in real time. And last week we talked about the fact that we want to avoid disaster and become sin's master because sin is really crouching like a predator. It's ready to take us out at any moment. And so as I was getting ready for today, I decided I wanted to stay in the animal kingdom with that metaphor for a little bit. And so I've just got a question for you guys. And if you're online, you can put your answers in the chat. But how many of you like nature documentaries? Raise your hands. What do you like watching nature documentaries? That's cool. Yeah, a lot of you like. They're kind of fun. They're cool, right? To learn about different animals, whatever it might be. I really do love a good nature show. I love, like the Planet Earth that came out and David Attenborough and that really just soothing, calming voice that I'm not even going to attempt to replicate right now. Like, he's just got it. But one of the things I really love is learning crazy facts about just like otherwise normal looking animals. And I've got a couple examples. Here's what I mean. So here we've got a dolphin. The dolphins are pretty cute. Yeah, everybody's like, oh, like, look, they're pretty cute, right? They're normal-looking animals, you'd think. Did you know that dolphins, although they are very cute and smart and intelligent, if they feel threatened by sharks, dolphins will literally gang up and, like, headbutt the shark to death? Some of you are laughing. Somebody's nodding, yes, I did know that. Good job. You get it. You get these nature, it's so weird, right? Like, they're so cute, and they see a shark, they're like, nope, and they're just going for it, right? Like, I did not know that. I didn't know they had that in them. That's a little terrifying to me, that I could swim with a dolphin, and it could be like, actually, I don't like you. Just go for it, right? Like that's terrifying. Here's another one for you. This next animal is called a slow loris. Now, everybody's just going inside. You're going, oh, like, look at it. It's got the tilted head. It's got the big eyes. It's cute. It looks innocent. It is incredibly toxic. Did you know that? This little thing right here. It's got, like, a toxin in its elbows, that's even weirder to be honest. Like, if it feels threatened, it'll, like, lick its elbows and then rub that saliva all over its body. And now it's like this toxic little ball of death. Like, that's what it becomes. And that is honestly really terrifying to me because you would never see that and you would like go up to one and they would just start licking its elbows and you're like, oh no, like I don't want anything to do with that. Like, that's just crazy. There's all these normal animals that just have this one thing where it's like, oh, you are actually terrifying. Like, look at him. You wouldn't expect that from a slow loris, would you? No. And then he goes, and you're like, no. And that's kind of what sin wants to seem like in our lives. Sin wants to be seen as this little slow loris right here. Like, it's normal, it's cute. Temptation's like, no, it's okay. Like, I'm fun, it's cute. If you handle it wrong, then sure, there might be consequences. But on the whole, come on. Like, it can't be that bad. And I'm here to tell you, sin is nothing like a slow loris. It couldn't be further from the truth. I don't know why more of you aren't writing that down. Sin is not a slow loris. Sin is not like that. It's not just cute and cuddly, and maybe if you do something wrong, it's like, oh no, but it's still cute. No, sin isn't like that at all. Honestly, for being really honest, sin is more like this next creature right here. Has anybody ever been personally victimized by a wasp before? Raise your hands. You know somebody that has? You've had a barbecue go wrong because of this right here? Yes, sin is way more like this wasp if we're being honest. When you breathe wrong near a wasp, it's like, and you're dead. Like, I'm just going to personally come after you now. If you let one in on the house on accident, you've just got it in the back of your mind now, there's a wasp in the house. I need to kill that wasp that's in the house before it like comes to me in my sleep. I don't know. Like you step outside by a nest enough and now you're just being chased. If you try to kill it with the wrong object, they just get more mad. I remember as a kid we tried to kill some wasps with ant spray and that just made them even madder than before. Like it didn't do anything to them at all. Like wasps just don't care. They are out to get you. They do not care that you're bigger than them. They are angry. They are cold and calculating and malicious. Like I have such a fear of them, like unhealthily. If I'm out drinking like a lemonade and it's nice out and a wasp sees my lemonade, that's his lemonade now. Like I don't even care. Like here you go, Mr. Wasp. Have a nice day. I'll just go back inside. Like that's more what sin is like. Sin is cold. It's calculating. It'll mess you up as soon as look at you, just like these wasps right here, and it will not miss a beat. You know, and you become consumed by the thought of it. You know you need to try to get it out. It controls your actions. It controls whether you go outside or not. It controls what you do or don't do. That's more what sin is like. And to make matters worse, because like these metaphors only go so far, right? Like you could kill a wasp, and the only way that a wasp really can actually do anything to you other than like the fear aspect is if it stings you, right? Otherwise, at worst, you're just kind of afraid of a flying insect. Like a wasp needs to sting you in order to hurt you. But sin, it appears, doesn't need to do that. Because nobody in their right mind, please tell me, nobody in their right mind would go and just like stick their hand inside of a wasp nest and then be shocked when they pull it out and they're all stung, right? Like nobody would do that. No sane, rational person would do that. But it appears that we have willingly allowed sin to sting us. We willingly take in its venom and allow it to infiltrate into us. It's because sin has a different sort of venom, and it sinks in deep and it sinks in low, and we invite it in. We're like, this is okay. It speaks to us in the same way that it would be like sticking your hand inside of a wasp nest and being like, I am okay with this. That's what we do with sin, and the venom that sin has is all wrapped up in just two little words. Here's those two little words. My way. My way is the venom of sin. And this my way mentality is a complex venom. There's times when my way seems okay, and for the most part, we'd be like, well, I feel like my way is okay. Seems virtuous even. Where you think, you know what, I've worked hard. I deserve this. They just won't listen to me, so I'm going to go about doing this my way. I earned this. This is the way that's best for me. This makes me happy. But this my way mentality means that we see the world through a lens of me and my way and my wants and the things that I desire. And the longer we allow ourselves to look at the world through this my way mentality, through this venom of my way, the more that it takes hold and the harder that it is to shake. Now you might be thinking, well, like, Michael, there's times and there's situations where like I really do need to do things my way, or like, but actually my way really is the best. You don't understand, and there's so many different ways though that this takes hold. Because I think for the most part we can all agree there's the really far end of my way where you get people with narcissistic, self-absorbed personalities, and that looks wrong and that feels wrong, and we all say, no, like, that's not where I'm at. Like, that's a really bad place to be, but I'm not that far. But my way has a lot of different ways that it can present itself, a lot of different ways that it can work into our lives. So I want you to take a little quiz with me. This one, you don't have to raise your hands. Don't elbow the person next to you, whatever it might be. Just kind of think this one through. If people correcting you makes you instantly feel defensive, you might be experiencing a little bit of this my way mentality. If somebody pointing out, like flaws or maybe something that was a little less than flattering of a character trait, and that automatically gets you up in arms to defend yourself, might be experiencing a little bit of my way. If somebody not 100% agreeing with your point makes them an enemy, that might feel a little bit like my way. If somebody asks a favor of you and you treat that inside like an incredible inconvenience, that might be a little bit of my way. If you put out a suggestion and somebody suggests like an alternate way to do something, and that becomes like a personal affront to you, that might be my way at work, and so on. So you see, my way has a lot of different ways that it shows up in our lives. This my way mentality has a lot of different ways that it can infiltrate us and that we can be living out of this state of being where it's just about me and what I want and what I desire. And temptation and sin want you here. They want you living out of a my way mentality where you do what you want, when you want, because you want to do it. Where your identity isn't built on God or on altruism or being there for others or whatever it is, it's built on you. And you want to know why? You don't know why my way is so good for sin and temptation. It's because it's such a pervasive thing. It sinks so deep and becomes so all-consuming that sin then gets to sit back while this my way mentality starts to creep in and wreck your family and your faith and your future. Because while you're thinking that maybe you're just doing what you want and not necessarily listening to anybody else, where you're just doing things your way, it's not really your way. My way isn't totally true in the fact that it's you that gets to do it. It's not Michael living out of Michael's way, but honestly, you're just following sin. It's sin's way. It's temptation's way. It's the devil's way. You know, you might not feel afraid. You might not be like, when you see a wasp and you start to go there, you might not feel afraid, but sin is making sure that you go exactly where it wants you to go and doing what it wants you to do. It's the one in control. It's the one calling the shots. And so today what I want to do is I want to show you more of this, what sin is really like, what it's actually after. Because again, it's not just some cute little animal that has some weird little quirk, but it is out to get you. It is out to ruin your life and your experiences. And it does so by getting you to listen to its voice. My way. That I can do what I want, but you're not really doing what you want. You're really doing what sin wants you to do. Because temptation doesn't care about you. Sin doesn't care about you. All it wants is for you to crash and burn. And so in order to see this objectively, because it can be hard to see this sometimes when it's in our own life, but it is easier to look at other things and figure out the patterns and examples and then apply it later. We're going to look today at a biblical account of some people who, in real time, they get to show us what sin is really like, what indulging in this my way mode of thinking can actually do to our lives. And so today we're going to look at a story that's found in the book of Genesis. It's the first book of the Bible. It goes through, talking about how everything kind of began, where all of the people and nations have been forming and interacting. And this story today is found in Genesis chapter 11. So again, we're at a place where we're kind of defining how things have started to come to be, where all these tribes have come from, where all these nations are coming from, and how they're starting their way in the world. And so this is Genesis chapter 11, just starting in verse 1. It says, "Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. And as people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there." And so again, this is just everybody's been kind of going out and doing their thing, and this one group of people has decided, we're going to move out east. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Come, let's make our name for ourselves, otherwise we're going to be scattered out. We're going to back up for just a moment here. When you read Genesis, when you read that first book of the Bible, there's a command that God has given a few different times to the people that were here on earth. He tells them to go and fill the earth. Be fruitful and multiply. Go subdue the earth. I've given you all power over the animals. Go work it. Go make it beautiful. The earth is yours, but go and fill it. Go and subdue it. These people, though, this group of people, they have a different plan. They have a plan that's more rooted in this my way. They say, you know what? We're not going to do that. Let's settle down. Let's build a city. Let's build a tower. Yeah, God, I know that you said go and fill the earth, but that sounds scary and kind of dumb, so we're actually going to set up shop here so that we can be a little more well-known, make a name for ourselves, be safe, be comfy, be secure. That sounds much better. That's what they're doing. God has told them to go, and they say, "Nah, we're going to stay right here." And so the first thing we can see about sin in this story is that sin is defiant. Sin is defiant. Defiance is defined as an open resistance or a bold disobedience. So this is kind of the other side of sin. Last week we talked about that sin is crouching. It's making itself small. It's making itself not that noticeable. Here we see a different side where sin is defiant. It is openly disobedient. It is openly resisting. And defiance always comes in relationship to someone or something. I'm sure we've all seen kids can defy their parents. If you've ever owned or known somebody that owned a cat, cats defy their owners, just knocking stuff off tables all the time and staring you right in the eyes while they do it. I've seen it. That's defiance. That is open defiance right there. And my wife and I just rewatched The Hunger Games. You've got Katniss boldly defying the Capitol. Here's a question. Does anybody remember, maybe this is just a weird point in my childhood, anybody remember moon shoes? Like 4 or 5 hands. There were these weird little slip-on things, and their promise was you can defy gravity and jump really high. And I won some in a raffle, and I can tell you they don't work. You could not jump really high. I went to try to dunk a basketball, and I was like, this is, you didn't defy anything, but that's the point, right? They're in relationship. You defy gravity, you defy people, you defy other things. So the question then is, okay, who or what is sin defying? And sin operates in defiance of God, but it does so in a very specific way. You see, there's a thread throughout the biblical narrative. If you read through the Bible, you'll find this main point all the way through is that we, as humans, biblically speaking, we're created to be with God. We're created to be in community with God. We find our identity in God. We live in community with others as a reflection of the heart and actions of God. But sin lives in defiance of God because sin is all about making us all about me instead of about this communal, relational aspect that we were created with in the very fabric of our being because we're supposed to be with one another and we're supposed to be with God. Sin's defiance comes from the fact that it says, I want you to be all about you. It's not just, it's deeper than just the disobedience of specific commands, don't do this and you do it. It's more than just doing bad things, but sin lives in defiance because it makes us push back against who we were made to be. You see, sin's defiance says, I'd rather put faith and trust in myself instead of the God who made me. I would rather trust my own judgment and my own abilities rather than walk this out with God or with others in community. And so in both very plain and in subversive ways, sin sets us up to go against the God who has made us to be and the life that he calls us to go by. And so in our story here, in the story of this group of people, this attitude, this collective defiance, this going against what God had wanted. He said, I want you to go, I want you to spread out, I want you to multiply, I want you to go and take care of all of the earth. And they said, no, we're going to set up shop right here. They did that as but it's a symptom of this my way mentality. They are defying God, not just in the order that he gave them, but in the fact that they were created to go out, and they've instead decided to make it all about me. They're outright rejecting God's plans for them. They're doing what they thought was best and not living into what God wanted and would have been best. And so that requires a response from God, and God does do something, and we're going to see just what here as we pick up in verse 5. It says that the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. We're going to come back to that tower in a moment. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language they've begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let's go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. right, there's a lot happening here. Now, you may have heard this story is commonly referred to as the Tower of Babel. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe not, but this is kind of where it comes from. So they've built this city, and in the center of this city, they've built this tower. And this is what the tower most likely looked like. It's called a ziggurat, and it is a cultural center and a religious piece. It's really tall, high up. There's a worship center up at the very, very top, a temple at the top. And what happened was it was common in the cultures that were around at the time. There's this big step tower built super high up. The idea was that if you built it high enough, you would be able to reach up to the heavens, reach up to the gods. Again, there was other cultures that were around as well. So reach up to whatever deity you believed in. And if you traveled all the way to the top, this is the point where the god would come down and meet with you, because back then they also thought the gods just lived literally up in the sky. So we go up, the gods can come down, and we can meet and talk, and I can make my demands and prayers and sacrifices and all of that. But it's a very my way kind of thing to build, right? I'm literally going to work my way up to meet with God. I'm going to approach God on my own terms. I've put in all of this work. I've put in all of this effort. I've climbed up all of these steps to get up to you. Now, God, come down here and talk to me. And this is what happens when sin is kind of running the show, when sin tells us to be defiant towards God. Because if I'm operating out of this my way mentality, and I'm operating out of defiance of who I was made to be and what I was created to do, then my relationship with God, if I have one at all, really does become one where I say, God, I'm going to interact with you on my terms. I'm not going to submit to the things that you might think are best. I'm not going to give in to the things that you might want, but you need to answer all my questions. God, I want you to be who I want you to be. I worked hard to get here. I know you say you're the all-powerful God who made everything, but right now, you're going to come and answer me. There's no togetherness there. There's no community when we're building ziggurats in our own heart and working our way up and demanding things of God. There's no walking with God. There's no working things out with God, but simply demanding things from God. That's what happens when we live in defiance of God. Our relationship with Him becomes this one-sided list of demands of things we need God to do in order for us to answer to Him. And so in this case, as they're building the tower and as they're building the city, God does actually come down. But He came down not in the way that they necessarily wanted Him to. It says they're going to go down and confuse their language so they can't understand each other. And let's see what He actually does with that. This is in verse 8. It says that the Lord scattered them from this city they were building, over all the earth. And they stopped building the city. That's why it's called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. That's where we get our word Babel from. It's confusion, right? It comes from a Hebrew word that meant confused. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. So that's why it's called Babel. So in the end, they end up getting scattered. They end up having to go out and work their way in the world. So God comes down, and He scatters them like He asked them to do in the first place. He said, I want you to go out, and I'm going to go with you. And in the end, He just says, I'm going to go send you out. And so confusing their language, remember, this is a group of people. There was no reason that they all would have spoken different languages. So they all were together, and they kind of came together. And confusing their language ended everything. Can you imagine the chaos that would have produced, where one day you're talking with your buddy about bricks, and the next day you can't understand him at all? That would have been such confusion and disarray and chaos. It ended everything. The city, it says, it didn't even get completed. This half-finished city and tower, there was no infrastructure that could happen. There was no community that could happen. There was no collaboration that could occur. It was chaos and confusion, as now people had to go out and make their way into the world again, like they were asked to in the first place. And that's the end result of sin, is division, is separation. That's another thing we can see about sin in this story, is that sin is divisive. There's no unity with sin. Even though these people, they were working together, and it seems like, oh, maybe you can accomplish stuff without working together with God, or even in defiance of God. It seems like they're doing okay. But the end result of sin, division. That's what sin wants. That's what its end goal is. It didn't care that they were able to work together. This is what it wanted all along. Sin sets you up with this my way mentality, with the goal of causing chaos and division in your life. We can see it here. These people got divided and scattered up because they chose my way instead of God. And then sin, which was in disobedience of God's commands and the way that he created them to be, it resulted in division. It was people divided from God's intentions and his presence, and people that were literally divided from one another. And this has been the goal of sin since beginning. If you go back to the beginning of Genesis, the very, very beginning of it, we're told that Adam and Eve, the first people, had one command. Don't eat from this tree. Everything else is fair game, but just don't eat from this one tree. Held out that choice, and sin whispers to them, yeah, I know that God said that, but I think that he's holding out on you. I think there's a better way to go about doing this. And so Adam and Eve decide to trust my way instead of listening to the voice of the Father. And as a result, there was division. There was chaos. They got kicked out of what was described as literal paradise on earth, where they got to walk with the living God every single day. But because they chose to live out of my way, they were separated from all of that. And this begs the question, why would sin want to divide? Why is that its end goal? Why would temptation want to cause division? Why would that be like the best possible outcome for sin? Well, think about it. If you go back to, talked about at the beginning, if we revisit the animal kingdom, lions don't go out and attack entire groups of animals at once, do they? What do? They separate out one, and they herd around it, and then it's vulnerable, and then they're able to kill it. If you think about wars and all of these different things, the best way to destabilize a nation or a group of people is to get them fighting with one another, to cause division, to separate out. Divided peoples can't see a common enemy. Divided countries fall apart. Divided animals get taken down, because division leads to destruction. Division leads to a place where you're alone, where you're vulnerable, where you're susceptible to all sorts of other things, because again, division goes against, it defies the very way that we were created to be, which is in unity, which is in community with God and with others. And so, of course, the end goal of sin would be division and separation, because that is the best place to be able to cause chaos and confusion and disaster in somebody's life. It's when you can get them alone, is when you can get them separated out from everything else, and then that voice can continue to whisper and continue to lie and continue to sink in deeper. Sin does not care about you. Temptation does not care about you. The devil doesn't want you to thrive and have a great life. He could care less. What it wants is to get you alone so that it can destroy you. That is the nature of sin. And that's what happens when we allow sin to rule our lives, when we give in to this my way mentality of living life. Sin lies to us. Sin gets us to defy God, to live out life in my way, and it feels good for a little while, but then sin leads us to division, where it divides us from God and it divides us from others. Sin's defiance divides us. And that's kind of our bottom line for today. It's the thing I want you to remember. If you don't remember anything else, sin's defiance divides us. That's its only goal. That's all it wants. It's division for the sake of separation and destruction. The defiance of sin, of living your life out contrary to who God made you to be, leads to division and destruction. Have you ever won an argument with somebody, but broke that relationship as a result? Have you ever done something wrong enough to the point where your conscience kind of got quiet and you didn't really feel bad about doing it anymore? If you're a parent or if you've ever been in charge of children, have you ever harped on a point so long that you now realize like your kids don't tell you things because they're afraid you're just going to yell at them more? Have you ever thought that, God probably doesn't care about me anyways, so I might as well just keep doing the things that I'm doing? Because why not? Sin's defiance divides us. Divides us from our families. It divides us from our friends. It divides us from the people and community around us. It divides us ultimately from God. And that's its goal. Sin doesn't care about you. Sin doesn't care that your relationships are falling apart. Sin actually wants your life to fall apart. It wants you to be alone. It is actively working to sabotage your life while making you think you're in control. Sin's defiance, it divides us and it leads to our destruction. When we act on it and we listen to those voices of sin and temptation, it's like we're walking around with our fists stuck in a hornet's nest and we're like, this is cool. This is okay. While all the while that venom is just seeping in and seeping throughout. Sin's defiance divides us. But it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to let sin be in control. We don't have to let temptation be the one running the show in our lives. And it's in the person of Jesus that we see a better way. Jesus, who was God's son, who was here on this earth doing his ministry, he showed a lot of people a different way to be. And Jesus was here. He wasn't all about my way. He wasn't here for himself, but he was here to point people to the kingdom of heaven. And as a result, there were a lot of people who did not like that, and so he was put to death. And just before he was put to death, Jesus had a moment where he was praying, and he was praying to God. And he said this. This is found in Luke 22. He just said, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Everything he was about to go through, everything that he was about to do, his death on the cross for all of our sins and defiance and disunity. If you're able to, take this from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Jesus said, you know what, not just what I want, but God, I'm going to trust you enough that what you want, it'll be done. Not my will, but yours be done. Not my way, but yours be done. We as people, we wanted to hang on to that temporary defiance, that high, that feeling of I'm doing what I want that eventually leads to total destruction, but not Jesus. Jesus said, here's what I would want, God. Here's how this would play out if I got my way, but I trust you. I don't want to be divided against you. I won't defy you. I trust you and your love for me. And so Jesus on the cross took our place. He took place for our defiance, our going against the way that we have been created to be in his death and resurrection. Because he didn't just die, but he laid down his life willingly and picked it up. And they offer us a place of unity, of community in the kingdom of heaven. And what Jesus shows us is that the way to beat sin's endgame of division and destruction is ultimately by trusting in God, in the way of the kingdom of heaven. That's it. And so instead of being defiant to the point where we become divided, we can actually be united in the way that we live and serve and love others around us as we trust in God. So today, it's a pretty simple question on the table. But we don't want to let sin tell us what to do anymore. And you don't have to. You don't have to be under the influence or under the control of that voice anymore. So the question that I want you to ask as you go from here and as you go about your life is this: where am I being defiant? Where am I making this all about a my way, me sort of mentality where I am not caring about other people, but I'm focusing selfishly on myself? Where am I being defiant? Or am I pushing back on what God has called me to be, a person who makes this world beautiful with other people? And if you're having a little bit of trouble figuring out, well, I don't really know where I'm being defiant. I don't really know what that looks like in my life. If you want to figure out where you are being defiant, one place to look is where your life feels divided. Take a look at your relationships. Where am I at odds with other people? Where am I at odds with God? Where am I living out of this my way mentality that's causing tension with other people? It's a really good place to start. And then when you figure those things out, when you start to identify, okay, here's some of the places where I'm feeling tension, where I'm feeling at odds with people, where I know I am divided from people. And a question to ask to take back some of that control so that sin can't just keep whispering things in your ear is how do I shift then from being defiant to being united? Because being united and living united, that is in the way of Jesus. Am I going to trust God to live out the way that he's called me to be, or am I just going to keep doing what I want? In this moment right now where I'm kind of arguing with my spouse, am I just going to keep doing what I want, or am I going to try to move towards them and their needs in this moment? If I'm at odds with a friend right now and we just aren't seeing eye to eye, what can I do to move towards them instead of planting my feet firmer in my own position? How can I move towards others? How can we move from being defiant and standing alone to being united, which is more in the way of Jesus? So I want you guys to take back our lives from this voice, from this venom that keeps seeping in and controlling us and making us live in these defiant ways where eventually we'll be divided and destroyed. And let's move towards living and loving in the way of Jesus as we move towards others, as we move towards community with God and with each other. Let's pray. God, thank you that you call us to love and to unity. Help us to be able to identify the voice of sin, where it's calling us to defy, where it's calling us to live against the ways that we were created to be, which is with you and with other people. Help us to move towards others with love and mercy and grace and humility, to serve them and to love them as you served and loved us, as you laid down your life on the cross for us. Help us to have the boldness and the courage to say, I'm sorry, to be able to own where we're at. And help us all collectively to show what it looks like when people don't live out of a my way mentality, but when we live for the life and the flourishing of all people. We love you. I pray you would open our eyes to these things this week in the real nature of sin. Help us to see it, and help us to see you and your love for us. It's in Jesus' name that we pray.